Well, a good morning to you folks. Welcome to Shippy the Explorer. Um, Bringing you another day um, of knowledge, of information, and exploring our environment. And today I was going out and find that I saw an article about the Underground Railroad in Maryland. So I just thought of bringing you part of that history. Now, welcome to Shippy the Explorer, and on a very bright day, it's 48 degrees and quite sunny. So now I wanted to keep a track of this house because the video today will be talking about slavery. This house I talked before, it's over 200 years, part of it is over 200 years old, and it was a great house for the Yarrow plantation. Now remember, keep that in mind, because we are going to, if that was the Yarrow plantation, was also called the sister plantation to the Riverdale plantation. And in a few minutes I'll show you the great house that the Riverdale plantation controlled. So I know the topic of slavery is hard to take but it was rampant in Maryland. Very rampant in Maryland. I was reading an article again and they said that Frederick Douglass and not Sojourner Truth. Actually, Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass are some of the most famous people in the United States, and they were actually from Maryland. So they are really famous for being a resistors. They resist the fact that they were slaves, and they took all the opportunities to try to escape from the system, and they escaped. They did. So I'm going to take you to that exhibition also, but I'll take you down to the Riverdale house. Now, the Riverdale house was predominantly one of the most elaborate structure in in the region, and that plantation was so large. You see one of the documents that I released where the University of Maryland sits on hundreds of acres of land. That land was bought from the Riverdale plantation. So in Maryland we have a lot of historical we have a lot of history relating to slavery and post-slavery, and we're sitting in the heart of it. So of course you have to take it through the construction area every time we get out of this region. As I talked before, the train tracks will be coming right down this path, folks. Right down the middle of the road in Riverdale. So those of you who don't know that United States or the Americas was part of the great triangular slave system, where slaves were taken from West Africa and some even East Africa in the later parts of the trade, and taken to the Caribbean, to South America, Central America, and later on into the North American region. And we talked about the first 13 colonies that exist, and their labor force was predominantly slave labor. Some indentured workers from Europe were also here, but the dominant labor force was forced labor. So that is it. So Maryland was one of the 13 colonies. They had strong slave contingency, and this whole region, this whole valley, you see the water flowing here. This is Wells Spring. It's called Wells Spring, that runs through this valley. This whole region was owned by the Calvert, the Riverdale Mansion people. And while I wait at the light, they say the Riverdale, a national now it's an historical landmark, is a restored 5-part stucco-covered brick plantation house built in 1801 and 1807. Construction of this elegant manor house was begun by Henry Steer, a Flemish aristocrat, and was completed by his daughter Rosalind and her husband George Calvert, grandson of the 5th Lord Baltimore. The Federal-style mansion has particular fine interior decorative detail, numerous nationality significant figures. So we are going around to that mansion. So I'll show you where that it's in this area, folks. Here we are. I'm just gonna park here for a second. So this is Riverdale Park. Now just pop through where you can see the mansion. You can you imagine, folks? This to the left there, you see the slave. It was kitchen, and can you imagine? I'm sure this was built with slave labor, and how elaborate these slave owners, the properties that they own. This property was hundreds of acres, and all these homes, I'm sure, weren't here. Some of them weren't here during the heart of slavery, but I think some of these were built in 1880 something. So now the house is controlled by Parks and Recreation, Riverdale Historic Museum. Riverdale, 1801. Now it's an National Historic Landmark. And you see the star. This is part of the Underground Railroad network. So remember this star, folks. I'll take you to another spot where this star will mean a lot. So I can't say if Frederick Douglass or Harriet Tubman had used the Underground Railroad system, but well, I think I can say that because the Underground Railroad is synonymous with Harriet Tubman, and she was born in eastern Maryland, and of course she escaped, and and then she came back many times and take her family. So when you talk about the Underground Railroad, you certainly have to talk about Harriet Tubman. And of course, Frederick Douglass became very famous. It was some of the stories that he was taught to read, but then he expanded his knowledge and became one of the greatest orator of his time. He died, I think, in was born 18 something. I think he died 1890 something. Yeah, but I'd have to look that up. So that's part of slavery, folks. That's something we have to deal with in the United States. So we're exploring, and I'm exploring and you're exploring with me. So Shippy the Explorer is taking you through Riverdale region, and we're going up to an exhibition. Okay, wow, it's a bit. Second, you notice part of this you're very observant. You'll notice that we were here yesterday. We just passed the Whole Foods. A lot of opportunities to shop, folks. So this exhibition we're gonna look at is part of the talks about the Underground Railroad and the railroad. Where I can explain a little of that is that as the slaves they escaped from the plantation, they would get to certain, they would travel at night and rest in the day. So when they're resting, they would either be in the bushes or they would find these spots, so friendly homes that people who were against slavery would hide them in their basement or in tunnels or so on, provide food and clothing for them. So the Underground Railroad is not a railroad as such, but an underground. I can't even say it's an underground. It's a make-believe underground. It's a secret path, put it that way, where the slaves would move from one area to the next and be assisted by folks as they go from place to place. So until they reach Canada, and when they reach Canada, then they declared themselves free from slavery. But when 1850, the slave catchers law was passed by the government, and it allowed slave catchers to go even into Canada, up to the Canadian border, and recapture people who were former slaves, and sometimes who weren't former slaves. There are many cases where we find that people were taken, who were born free and were captured and taken back into slavery, because the law allowed these catchers to make big money, and so it was nothing for them. It was an enticement for them to go all over the country and capture people, whether capture ex-slaves or free people. And then the money, they make all that money. So slavery in America was technically a big money-making thing, folks. always a problem getting parking in this town. Always a problem. That's one thing with College Park. It's okay, so when I get to the exhibition, I'll talk to you folks. Bye for now. Shippy the Explorer. So we're coming to Maryland College Park Municipal Building. We're going to figure out where the exhibition is. Oh, hi, good morning. I'm looking for the exhibition. Oh, just in the lobby here. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Oh, so this is called Stories of Flight, Maryland in black and white. In honor of Black History Month, the City of College Park, in partnership with the Maryland State Archives, is providing the 5-panel traveling exhibition, Flee, Stories of Flight from Maryland in black and white. So basically, the flight of fugitives. See, $500 for reward for fugitives, folks. Fugitive slaves in Maryland often fled without knowing whom they could trust. Runaways sometimes received help from relatives and friends and sought shelter in cities like Washington, D.C., Baltimore. They could be captured by slave catchers for large rewards. $500, folks, in 18-something. That's big bucks. And this is a letter. I'll read it for you if I can. I do certify that during the last war, while the one some of it, you did see Peter Anderson, resident with the enemy, and also see them mount the park horses and go off with them. They did persuade me to go on also, but I refused to do so and begged them to come back. They joined the enemy while they were encamped on Captain Christopher's junket plantation. Given under my hand the 4th day of March 1828. So this is an eyewitness. Big, big dollar, folks. Flee. Stories of flight from Maryland in black and white. So the Underground Railroad touched all parts of society, enslaved and freed blacks and white. Runaway slaves looked to their friends, family, and strangers for assistance. Slave owners and supporters of slavery worked to capture escapees for financial gain and to preserve their social status. So this exhibit explores previously unknown stories of slave owners, fugitives, and accomplices to show how slavery and the flight of freedom shaped the lives of all of Marylanders. Here is an advertisement. $50 reward. Run away from the subscriber living near the Brook Church in the forest of Prince George's County, Maryland. On Tuesday, the 16th of September, 1856, a Negro man named Ben, commonly called Benjamin Duckett, and he's declaring that I purchased him from Mr. Edmonds B. Duval, who knows his father. His mother belongs to Mr. Marcus Duval, near Buena Vista Post Office in this county, and you no doubt may be found in that neighborhood. Ben is of dark ginger color, about 25 years of age, 5 feet 10 and 11 inches high, has an impediment on his speech, and when spoken to has a down look and pats his left foot. His clothing not collected as he has various kinds. I will give the above reward for his apprehension, no matter where taken, provided he is brought back home, secured in jail, so that I get him again. Zachariah Berry of Washington, October 1st, 1856. So, these guys, these slaves were valuable properties, and the owners make all effort to to recapture them. There we go, another exhibit. Slave owners. So it says slave owners in Maryland used slaves to cultivate wheat and tobacco, or to perform domestic work and skilled labor. Slave owners saw their slaves as property sources and revenue, status symbols, and important investments. They also saw them as dangerous threats who needed to be controlled and kept by bay. Owners feared runaways would encourage other slaves to escape or rebel. When slaves escaped, masters might punish those who remained. And there's a case study here of Rickson Webb, was a free black man who owns. Here's some important things, folks. This is Rickson Webb, was a free black man who also owned slaves. Has unusual but not unheard of situations. Like his white counterparts, he enforced the cruelties of the slave labor system in Maryland. Owning slaves possibly elevated Webb status in society, even among whites. Webb owned at least 6 slaves, including Alfred, who tried to escape from his Caroline County farm in 1844. So you can see the value. One Negro girl, Harriet, cost $120. Well, and that's a good question. Was it dollars or pounds those days? You can see a list of slaves on the left and their monetary value on the right. There is slaves. You would think that the slaves were just farmers, but a lot of them came to, as you know, in Africa, you all had knowledge. Some of them were Muslims, so they were able to read. Some of them came knowing music, and the knowledge how to farm and build furniture. But some of them pick up, you can see this guy with his banja. And banja actually came out of Africa. Well, you can look it up to prove me right. It was one of the instruments that came out of Africa. So it's not Western, but African. $5 reward here will be given for the apprehension and delivering Eastern jail of Negro boy Alfred, who escaped. He formerly belonged to Absalom Thompson. And this was April the 27th, 1844. Here we are, another good case. Sorry. Case study. Reverend John Ashton, a Jesuit priest at the White Marsh Church in Prince George's County, lost many slaves who not only ran away but who also challenged him in court. 2 groups of slaves escaped from Ashton at the end of the 18th century. The Queen family, a group of 12, fled in 1795. 3 years later, brothers Charles and Patrick Mahoney also ran away. Both groups unsuccessfully sued Aston for their freedom. Aston manumitted the Mahoney brothers in 1804, but the Queen family remained enslaved. So here's a good example that the institution of slavery was an institution, because you have all types of people enslaving others. Even a Jesuit priest, black person, and women and men, all trying to make a profit or a living out of the institution of slavery. So you can see many times on the plantation there was not cash, but the wealth of the plantation was the slaves. The wealth of the plantation was the slave, and actually the land that the plantation owners owned. But believe it or not, all types of people enslaved these folks because the money was big and the profit to be gained was a lot. And here is another exhibit. They call it accomplice. means when you support another person, maybe to escape or to fight a case. Free and enslaved blacks as well as sympathetic whites assisted runaway slaves by offering refuge, advice, and legal assistance. Accomplice risked atrocity, ostracism, imprisonment, and death. Fugitive slave laws required all citizens to report runaways to authorities. People who enticed slaves to escape or aided fugitives would receive years in prison. Here's a case study. The fear of separation from friends and family was a common motivation to attempt an escape. Abraham Brogdon, a free black, worked in Anne Arundel County near his enslaved wife, Cinderella. Brogdons fled together in 1848, fearing that Cinderella would be sold to a distant man to settle her owner's debts. The attempt failed and Abraham was sentenced to the Maryland Penitentiary while Cinderella was sold outside Maryland. Sympathetic Annapolis residents wrote that Abraham's crime was in endeavoring to set his wife at liberty. Sadly, Cinderella passed away before Abraham was pardoned in 1853. So in the middle of that, in the middle of enslavement, you had love. Because you can't borrow love from people. You're free or you can be in love. You're enslaved, you can be in love. And here's a man trying to take his wife into freedom because he was afraid that he wasn't going to be enslaved. And she died before the husband was pardoned. So I can tell you, that's the reason why we regard slavery as a tough part of our history. Although people have the atrocities where they have lost, especially the European Jews who lost 6 million, but in the America's slavery, more than 15 million people died in that between the passage from Africa and the bad treatment that was placed on them on the plantation. And at the end of by 1807, when the British stopped the slave trade out of Western Africa, most of the tribes and the population of the tribes were devastated. I'm not sure if Africa has recovered, or maybe they're just recovering from that great atrocities, where you pick up women and child and young boys and girls, people with knowledge about plants and animals, mining and manufacturing, reading, writing, way of life, and you transport them to another part of the world where they have to live on the oppressed condition. So the areas, the land areas and the tribes, especially on the West African coast, certainly were her the way of life was damaged. This is Shippy the Explorer exploring with you folks. This is serious matter. And as other people talk about their atrocities of their people, the slave experience needs to be talked about in schools and museums and libraries and explained in books. Because if you don't talk about your past, you don't know where you're going in the future. You can explore back, but you also need to explore going forward. And if you know some of your history, then it makes it easier for you to go forward in life. So let's hold the Great Triangular Slave process in our hearts and our minds and learn as we go about it. Let's learn. Keep it dear to our hearts, because I'm sure this will help people to understand who they are and where they're going. Hi, good.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So that's the flea story, folks. It's big. It's big. Oh, there's one more exhibition here. This one is called Toward Freedom. All slaves in Maryland were freed by the state's constitution of 1864, and a new chapter was opened in the lives of the African Americans. Fate of many fugitives and former slaves is unknown. Some fugitives settled in North and others returned to Maryland to live near family members to find work. A few like Harriet Tubman and Emily and Mary Edmondson remain well known today. The stories of fugitive slaves are featured in works of such as Refugee or narratives of fugitive slaves in Canada by Benjamin Drew. So Harriet Tubman escaped from Dorchester County in 1849 and returned many times to lead others to freedom. She later became an advocate for abolition and women's rights. But this is Mary and Emily Edmondson, 1850s, from the Library of Congress. And this is the famous Frederick Douglass. And this is Harriet Tubman. So we should call this exhibit, this video, Toward Freedom. The space is so sacred that I'm tempted to even stay a little longer. This building was beautifully done, finished about 2 years ago. So as we celebrate Black History Month, as Shippy the Explorer, I hope I've been able to bring you a little of the rich history. It's a sad history, but it's also rich of this region, about African Americans, and also it's also all Americans. It's the history of America, really. But why we talk about Black History Month is that we're allowing the story to be told at a greater level, at a higher level, with more accuracy during this time of the year. It's not that we are negating or ignoring other people in this society, but the story of African American, who we are, where we came from, what did we do, what did we contribute to the development of this great society. It needs to be told, and that's what it's all about, the African American Month. This is College Park, folks, and this is Shippy the Explorer. Saying thanks for spending the time with me again, and hope you have learned something from this short film, and sorry, and you have been entertained to a certain extent, but you're in the process of learning. So say bye for now, and as we explore, we hopefully expose you to more knowledge as we go from here in life. So bye for now. If you like what you've seen or heard, like, share, subscribe. Bye for now. Shippy the Explorer.